Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the match preview. Newcastle head down to Bournemouth on Saturday evening for a 5:30 kickoff in front of the Sky cameras. Yet again, I'm joined by John Gibson to look ahead to that game. John, it's good news for Newcastle United fans at home, but the point has to be said: Newcastle United are nearly always on the TV. It's like the TV companies know they're going to get a good show from the Magpies.
Well, when you think of the run we've had, there's not a side that's lost only one game this season in the Premier League. Newcastle are the only side. All of a sudden, we've been discovered as a top four side, and we're literally on, aren't we? We're on against West Ham, we're on against Bournemouth, we're on against Liverpool, we're on in the Carabao Cup final, and we're on against Manchester City. All the next 5 games or whatever it is, all on telly, and all with these peculiar kickoff times as a consequence. All 5:30, 4:30 the cup, and 12:31 with Man City, I think. But yes, they've suddenly discovered that the Geordies are back, and not quite entertaining like the entertainers themselves.
The next time there'll be a 3:00 kickoff on a Saturday afternoon. It'll be a moment to savour, won't it? A good old traditional 3:00 kickoff.
Or it'll be sadly a recognition that Newcastle are out of the running for everything if they ever revert back to 3, because there's no more cups, of course, after a couple of weeks' time. But there's an awful lot in the league, and we'll revert back to a Saturday at 3:00 only if we're about 7th or 8th in the league. So I'm quite happy to put up with the dodgy times, because it means we're successful.
And it means a lot of people get to watch Newcastle on telly when maybe they can't get to the stadium. And of course, all the games are covered live on chroniclelive.co.uk through our live blog. As we mentioned there, John, Newcastle face Bournemouth on Saturday. I would put this in the bracket, as I did the same bracket as the West Ham game, a game that if you're chasing top 4 football, you need to be winning, don't you?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, we are. It sounds as if you're being. I almost find myself uncomfortable saying it, because it sounds as if you're being gloomy when you're actually in the top 4. But we've got to start turning draws into wins, because if we're going to stay in the top 4, because we've been having too many draws, and there's a big difference over a period of time between small steps, 1 point a game, and large steps, 3 points a game. It off changes. I mean, it's not so long ago we were clear of Manchester United in 3rd, and now we're looking over our shoulder and trying to hold off Spurs and not go 5th. All of which is still wonderful, because we've had an amazing season, but one point a game, that's what it does to you. Suddenly gaps don't exist anymore. And Spurs winning against Man City, which might have been a surprise to all our people that look at regular results, was the Philippine City at Tottenham on the bounce, and Man City have never scored a goal. I mean, that's incredible. And yet Man City lose at Spurs, and Newcastle won at Spurs. So all of a sudden, they're right breathing down our necks. Which means, going back to what you originally said, it's yet again a must-win. Only this time, the must-win as opposed to draw.
Yeah, I know what they've drawn 4 out of their last 5. And Eddie Howe was asked about it after the West Ham game and said, is it a cause for concern? And he said something on the lines of it depends how you look at it. From a positive point of view, we maybe have lost that game last season. And they didn't do this season. And I guess that is one of the positives you take away from it, isn't it, John? That they're not losing. They don't look like conceding too many goals. And it's a sign of how far they've come, because probably last season they would have lost this game.
It does, and you can't expect you would expect the manager to say, well, no, it's not a time to panic. If he suddenly said, oh yes, it's very disappointing, we're awful, we're decimated, we're on a bad run, would be going, blimey. But facts are still facts, and more points need to be gathered. And what I'm fearful of, when we look as if we're not going to score a lot of goals. And by the way, haven't we had 2 great starts? Was it Southampton at home, and here we scored 2 goals in the first 5 minutes. The first one was rightly chalked off, of course, because the ball was over the line when Almiron crossed, but it was a wonderful drag back and finish nonetheless. But we get off to a flyer. Callum Wilson scores, which is a huge relief, etc. But we go on and draw, and we may well have the best defence in the Premier League, and we have 12 goals conceded in 21 games. Nobody's near that. That's brilliant. But you know what happens when you're not scoring? The pressure on your defence mentally, not physically, mentally, is huge, because they know they've only got to make one mistake and 2 points are down the drain. Or if it's not at the time, 3 points can be down the drain. But they've only got to make one mistake. As good a defence as they are, one mistake is, when we aren't scoring goals, one mistake is hugely costly. And that is a big strain on a defence. And that concerns me from a defender's point of view, because they're going into every game and they're under pressure for 90 minutes. Unless we are 2 up or 3 up, that's the way it is. And they're under pressure for 90 minutes. And it's a tough ask. So not only are the strikers affected, i.e. they're not scoring, but the defenders are affected, because they have to not make a solitary single slip the whole of the match. Like their goal, we didn't mark up well on a corner. They scored the back post. One mistake, 2 points have gone. And that's the pressure the back lads and Pope are under, which is... it's tough.
Bournemouth coming to this game having conceded the most in the Premier League. And while Newcastle United don't look like they're going to score too many goals, you would hope Callum Wilson getting back on the score sheet against West Ham will give him a big boost. Isak back in the squad, Anthony Gordon potentially starting. I mean, I'll get your views on that in a moment. You would think and hope that Newcastle's poor run of goals of late will be forgotten about come Saturday tea time, and fingers crossed.
It'll only be forgotten about if they make us forget about it by doing something about it and starting to score. The point I'm making is we can look at it in midweek and say, with a defence like we've got, well, okay, whether we're scoring or not, we've got the basis for a draw straight away, and we want one bit of luck up front, and we've won 1-0. But I've just been telling you the other side of the coin. The back four plus the keeper are on immense pressure. They go down there and they know they've got to block off any side for an hour and a half. And yes, Bournemouth haven't been scored, but they've got to block off any side for an hour and a half, because if they make one slip, it might mean we don't get 3 points.
When you say block off, does that mean you're expecting Bournemouth to throw everything at Newcastle, or
sorry, so expecting Bournemouth to
just throw everything at Newcastle, and Newcastle need a bit more control in the middle of the park?
No, sometimes, it's harder. If we are playing and controlling it a bit in the middle of the park but missing chances up front, it can be harder for concentration for a back four in front of Pope to keep the concentration. Pope is wonderfully good at that, by the way, isn't he? He can have nothing to do in a match, and then one super shot, and he produces a worldly of a save, because he is great at keeping his concentration. Yes, our defence, do not get me wrong, our defence is giving me great, great hope every match that we play. I'm just trying to be part of the defenders union and say, look, guys, let's feel sorry for them. Let's realise that during this sticky run without goals, and it could well end at Bournemouth, it just takes one match and you get 3 in that game and you're up and cooking again. But the back four, it puts pressure on the back four, because they realise one slip couldn't be so costly. If you're 2-0 up or 3-0 up, one slip is unlikely to be costly. It might end in a goal against you, but unlikely to cost you points. But if it's tight, it will cost you points.
When you say costly, are you looking at that because Newcastle haven't been brilliant in front of goal? They've been wasteful. They've not been creating too many chances.
I mean, all the draws we've been getting. I mean, we had about 3 on the top. No draws, weren't they? And then we had the 1-1 with West Ham, but we've been drawn a lot, not. And while that's a good result at Arsenal, it's not when you're home to Leeds and whoever. And the pressure, we could dominate possession, dominate corners, the number of corner kicks, dominate quite a few things, but still come out with just a point or with a 1-goal defeat. I'm not talking particularly about Bournemouth. I'm talking about at any time, because of the pressure that's on the back four. Let us hope, and I mean, we've got 2 matches, away to Bournemouth and at home to Liverpool. If we can get our goal scoring back, the defenders will still be okay. They just want a bit of mental relief, if not worrying obsessively about making a single mistake. If we can get back scoring, not only will it put points on the board for the Champions League, but it'll put us in fine fettle to go to Wembley. So I'm looking for us to get back on scoring and relieving the pressure. We have done exceptionally well this season. We're 4th top in February and going to a cup final in a couple of weeks' time. That is absolutely wonderful. But what I don't want to see happen is it to be slightly blown because we've stopped knowing how to score goals. And therefore, I'm looking in these 2 games for us to start scoring goals again, which means getting points and getting in fine fettle for going to Wembley.
I suppose this is the £1 million question, isn't it, John? Why have the goals dried up? Because you look back at some of the games, and yes, some of the games didn't create too many chances. The opposition defended well. Other games, Newcastle have been just downright wasteful with their chances. I suppose it's a bit of both, isn't it? A bit of all elements, lack of creativity, missing sitters, defenders doing the job for the opposition. But what is the reason you're thinking? How does Eddie Howe go about solving it?
Well, how you go about solving it is a difficulty, and that's the job of the bloke just behind you. Without a shadow of doubt. Yes, there he is, Eddie, in whom we believe and trust. Let him. It's his job to solve it. I mean, the simple answer, and there's no simple answer, Andrew. It's a multitude of things. Is that our top 2 goal scorers who couldn't stop scoring at the back end of last year, Almiron with 9 and Wilson with 6 before West Ham, have suddenly stopped scoring. Wilson had gone 10 games without scoring. Almiron's gone 7.5 now. They've stopped scoring, and they couldn't stop scoring to begin with. So when you haven't got a regular goal scorer, a regular finisher, you suffer. Now, I think that the mental pressure of battling continuously at the top of the table is something totally new to these players, outside of Trippier, who won La Liga with Atletico Madrid. I mean, these lads have been used to battling at the bottom, or the newcomers of not having the pressure of a Premier League week after week after week after week. Not only must we not lose, but we must win. And that is a new sort of pressure. And that is a mental pressure that makes you mentally tired. And we've gone same team, haven't we? Until Bruno forced us to have a change, and we kept that to 1 personnel-wise. And I think these guys have been under a huge amount of mental pressure, which they will get used to and get battle-hardened against. We have not got a great squad in depth to be able to do something about it. Although it's going to be fascinating with Gordon and Isak there. Do you go unchanged again at Bournemouth, Eddie? Or do you bring in Isak and Gordon and try to freshen it up? But we're not scoring. That's the first thing. And by the way, have you haven't resigned from that Almiron fan club now that he's reverted to nature, young sir? Have you?
Not yet. He's going to get a few more goals. Although David,
is he? Are you promising me that and promising Eddie that?
Do you know
and
what?
Promising all the fans that?
When Miggy Almiron
We
scores,
need that. By the way, if he does that, you just said, what's the answer to the problem? Well, if Miggy does what you say, that's the answer to the problem. If he starts scoring like the first half of the season, that's the answer to the problem.
when he scores in that EFL Cup final and brings the cup home to Tyneside, then we'll have another chat.
Yes, and we will have another chat when he doesn't score at Bournemouth, doesn't score against Liverpool, and doesn't score in the cup final.
Come on, where's the positivity, John? He's going to score in all 3 games. David, though, says he has ripped up his application to the Mickey fan club. So he's with you, John, on that one. I suppose when we talk about the solution to the goals, you know, a lot of the players that Newcastle have at the moment are confidence players. You know, Almiron is one of those confidence players. Wilson, St. Maximin, you know, they need form behind them. They need their spirit, you know, at the highest possible point. And that will also play a massive factor into them getting goals, getting back on form and maintaining form and helping Newcastle maintain the place in the top 4.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no question about it. Let's not be too harsh on these boys, by the way. They've still only lost 1 in 21. They've still got the best Premier League defence anyway. They've still set a record going back to 2004, I think it is, for the number of away games unbeaten on the trot, something like 7, I think. So, you know, they're still there and cooking. It's just now, while we were out on the highway standing alone, Man United have sneaked off, and if they get the result against Leeds this evening, that, you know, another 3 points, that would put some fresh air between us and them. But as I said on this podcast, I think last week and the week before, Andrew, I've always been concerned about the 5th position, not the 3rd position. And because if we finish in the top 4, we're cooking on gas, we're in the Champions League. So I've always looked at the 5th position. That's changed with Spurs beating Man City. And therefore, the best way of holding these people off is returning to winning ways. And while it's easier said than done, that you can make a case out why we can get 6 points before we go to Wembley. Bournemouth are second bottom, and Liverpool are in absolute disarray. Have you ever seen a club fall so far off the mountaintop? I mean, last season they played in all 4 competitions right at the death, at the top. They won the FA Cup and the League Cup. They finished second in the Premier League, only losing out to Man City on a point. And they played in the Champions League final against Real Madrid, which they lost 1-0. They played in successfully in all 4 competitions. Look at them now. So that we've got a real chance of revenge there. We could win the next 2 games, but it's a big could. But yes, we could win the next 2 games. They are winnable.
I mean, just looking briefly ahead to that Liverpool game, St James's Park is going to be absolutely rocking. What a part to play in that game the fans will have, but we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
What I want to do is just dive into a few of the comments. We've got loads of questions coming in live, which is really great to see. So Sean says here, even if Mickey doesn't score, he gets the ball in the box. And as long as there's someone in the box, then Mickey is a must for me every time, even though he isn't scoring goals. We have Ed saying Wilson has looked lively though. So when we've been saying that he's not scoring
Where have
goals,
you gone,
still...
mate?
Oh, are you still there, John?
No, we've lost you. We lost you. I couldn't hear you at all.
Are we back now?
You are back now, my friend.
Grand, yeah. Sorry, that's the curse of doing it live. Yeah, I was just reading out there Sean's comment on Almiron. He says
I saw it along the bottom of the screen. Yes.
Yeah, and then Ed says Wilson's looked lively, even though he's not been scoring goals. What else have we got? Sean says, why not put Isak and Callum on? It's a risk. But Isak looks like a proven goal scorer every time he plays. That is probably one of the big talking points, isn't it, John? Does Eddie Howe risk playing Isak and Wilson together? He had alluded to it before the transfer window. That might be something they do when Isak gets back to full fitness.
Yes, it would depend, Andrew, on how you use Isak. Because he, I think he can play the orthodox way. I think he could play on either side of Wilson in the way that Joe Linton and Almiron has. I think he could play. They're not really wingers. They come inside the pair of them, don't they, etc., etc. But I think he could play that way. Or you could decide to put him closer to Wilson, play him just off Wilson's shoulder. And that was what Eddie was talking about when he's saying we might do it, it would mean a little change. But I think, for example, he could come in at Bournemouth, either in place of Miggy or in place of Sam Maximum, and play orthodox the way they do. And may I say, I don't think for 1 minute, Andrew, Newcastle spent a club record £60 million to only have a cover centre forward for when Callum Wilson's injured. You wouldn't spend 60 million on a club record by some distance, by the way, a club record. You wouldn't spend that for him to sit on the bench and be the regular reserve number 9 to Wilson. He's got to get in the team. And he's proved that he scores goals and makes them when he is in the team, the little we've seen of him. So you've got to give him a chance at something. Also, you're going to have a very depressed Isaac if you don't. You've got to give him a chance at something, and you must play Gordon at Bournemouth because he come on, and what terrific feat in quickness of thought and vision. He was a breath of fresh air when he came on. So I would start Gordon down there for a certainty. And how long are you going to wait for Isaac to start a game? It's difficult for the lad, and he is a £60 million player.
Well, I would have started him had he been available against West Ham. But given the fact that Callum Wilson actually scored against West Ham, even with Isaac back and fit and ready to go, I can't see him replacing.
No, he's not going to get rid of Wilson out the team this Saturday, because not only has he scored at long last, but he's going back to Bournemouth. With Eddie, they both come from Bournemouth. He ain't going to drop him. But how about dropping Almiron and playing Isaac in that position and Gordon on the other side? So I'm just having a little tongue in the cheek at you, of course.
I know how you work, John. But
Isaac got to come back in this side. Do you not think? Forget whether it's Bournemouth or Liverpool.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He's got to get a start.
I think he showed in the appearances against Southampton in the Cup that he's definitely a first team player. But I just wonder whether the fact they've only got 2 recognised strikers to get them to the end of the season will also play a factor. You would love to play them both. I think it would work. No doubt it would work. But I just wonder whether that does play a part in why Eddie Howe might not do it, just because if you lose one...
Listen, if Newcastle continue to not score goals, what's the point of having a £60 million man sitting on the bench and coming on for the last quarter of an hour or 20 minutes?
You see, but I could see him coming in Wilson. I could see him coming in long term. If that was the case going forward, I could see him potentially coming in for Wilson. I know there was plenty of calls for the Southampton game to start Isaac. And again, I would have started against West Ham had he been fit. I think long term, if Newcastle struggle to score goals,
you know what, Andrew, the game against West Ham got off to a sensational start. Almiron got the ball across. Willock showed terrific feet, stuck it away. Nobody was to know at that moment that it was minimally out. Already had crossed the line. It had, and the goal was rightly chalked off, but it was still a well-constructed goal. We went straight down, great ball from Sean Longstaff, and Wilson scored. And with a terrific centre-forwards finish. So we're off to the best start possible. In the rest of the game, that's 85 minutes, we didn't look like scoring a lot of goals. Wilson missed 2 sitters. He missed, remember the sitter when Gordon played him in the same sort of position from where he scored, and he was swallowed up by the covering defender who got it out for a corner. And then remember when he got free on a header and headed it straight at the keeper, when if it had been either side of the keeper, it was a goal. So when I'm saying that Isaac might give us an option to get back to scoring goals, it's not as though having scored twice in the first 5 minutes, one of which counted against West Ham, would gone on to pepper them and win 3-1 or whatever. We didn't look like scoring for the rest of the goals, so that problem's still there. And maybe Isaac will solve it. Maybe Gordon coming in with the freshness he's got will help to solve it. And I think he will help to solve it. And I would certainly, the easy selection, Andrew, for me, is that you play Gordon for some maximum, because he didn't take the opportunity to, that first start for Yonks in the league, and he didn't take the opportunity to stamp his mark on the game at all. So I could see Gordon coming in for some maximum on Saturday. And then you're absolutely right. There's no chance, and I've said this in copy when I've been saying Isak can be an answer. There's no chance of Isak replacing Wilson for this particular game. Wilson having scored in the last one and going back to Bournemouth. No chance of him playing 9. It's whether he's still put in the side just to brighten it up a little bit, or that he's not.
I could see Gordon starting. I thought he did really well in the 20-odd minutes he had. He looked sharp, wanting to hit the ball forward. As you say, very nearly set Callum Wilson up for what would have been the winner. A lot of people actually, John, agreeing with you in the comments saying, why don't we rest Miggy, because keep him fresh.
Well, yes, I meant that. I personally would play Isak, Wilson and Gordon for this game. We know that it's going to change back. Miggy will play at Wembley because he's earned that right, and Gordon cannot play at Wembley, so somebody else has got to play there. But our need is now. Our need to get goals is now. And I'll tell you what, we're not scoring goals, and we've got 2 forwards who cost us £100 million. Isak at 60 and Gordon at 40. £100 million. We don't score goals and will not start them. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
Sounds like you might have the solution there. Steve says, do you think Eddie has been a bit stubborn with his selections? Surely it's time to bring on some fresh legs, i.e. Isak and Gordon, not to drop players, but just to give hard-working players a rest.
Yes, I do think. You see, we have played the same team. The mental problem, I don't think that produces a physical problem, because we're not playing too many matches. We've only played in one cup in the Premier League. It's the mental pressure of playing at the top of the table. In a way, it's a different pressure from playing at the bottom, because, when you play at the bottom, Andrew, and you lose, so does everybody around you, because bottom teams lose all the time. So you're all losing down there. But you play at the top, you get a draw, and suddenly you're getting swallowed up because everybody's winning at the top end. There's a lot of mental pressure. And we have gone with the same old. And I just think, I've watched in the last couple of games, Andrew, and in my humble opinion, and I'm not meaning we've looked leggy. We look as though we need a fresh lick of paint. And if you've got £100 million worth of 2 players on the sideline, wouldn't you think, well, let's give them... I'm not trying to tell Eddie how to do his job, and Eddie's done brilliantly for us, absolutely brilliantly for us. But I do think that if you've got £100 million, which is what these 2 cost, and by the way, the current owners paid the £100 million, I would be saying to Eddie, there's no chance that you might give these lads a little run out at some stage, my friend, is there?
I think what comes into it is momentum, though, as well. And we know that Eddie likes to keep that same side and try and build that momentum with the cup final coming up.
You're right, Andrew, but do you not think we're losing the momentum? That very thing we're talking about is what we haven't got now. We had a momentum where we must have won 6-7 games on the trot a little while back. That is momentum. Drawing 5 out the last 6, 3 0-0s and a 1-1. That's not momentum. That's losing momentum. There's a word in front of the word momentum, and it's losing momentum. Not losing games, losing momentum. And I'm very, very anxious not to appear to be having a go, because this is a wonderful... This squad, thin as it is, has produced wonderful results. Eddie and his coaching staff has somehow created something quite magnificent. And we're in a cup final. But I don't want to lose momentum for the Champions League, and I don't want to lose momentum with the cup final only 2 weeks off and Manchester United going like rats up a drainpipe. I want us to regain our momentum. And I feel at the moment we're leggy and we need some help. And I just think 2 new faces, Gordon and Isaac, and how much money they cost us, are already, they must be begging to play. I mean, Isaac must be begging to play. Gordon won't. He's just arrived and he got on last week. But I think he thoroughly deserves a start ahead of Maxi. And I know that he can't play in the cup final, Gordon. But hey, these aren't just warm-up games for the cup final. These are games to put us in the Champions League.
Ian says, Gibbo speaks complete sense. We need to start to rotate as the current team without Bruno seem to be struggling to break teams down. Ian, Gibbo will slip that £20 in the post to you later on. We've got a few people talking about Alan St. Maximin, and I said on Monday's show that I was bitterly disappointed. I'd be surprised if he's still here come next season.
Well, remember, I said to you that I think somebody's been in his ear. I said to you in last week's podcast, remember, Andrew? And his body, everything about Maxi, his body language tells me that I will be staggered if he's here come August.
Well, reports in Italy confirm that, or claim at least, that there were talks held between AC Milan and St. Maximin Newcastle to see if a deal could be done. You can see that story on our website. But a lot of people actually join in defence of Maxi. Dan says, so Maxi gets one match and now he gets dropped. It's a little bit harsh. Other people saying that Maxi needs a run of games to get back on to back into form. What do you make of that? Do you give St. Maximin?
I can follow the theory. Is perfect. The theory is absolutely correct. You need a run of games but he doesn't look to me a happy bunny. I used that phrase last week. When he's come on as sub, he hasn't, when you watched him against Manchester City, he was almost bursting out of his britches. He was that full of life, wasn't he? And full of let me get at him. Kyle Walker plays for England, plays for Man City. Forget him, I'll tear him to shreds. And he did. I just feel all is not right with this man. I am convinced of that. I'm convinced that he probably thinks that he hasn't been too fairly done to, and he should have had more starts, etc., etc. But let's forget temporarily about the League Cup final coming on. Where do you think Gordon's going to play? Gordon's going to play in St. Maximin's position, and if St. Maximin doesn't do something about it, like if he ripped up West Ham and would 1-2-1, he'd be first on the team sheet for Bournemouth because Bruno's still out, and he rips him up again, then he can knock on the door and say, hey, Gaffer, I think I should play at Wembley. Now, what's he say about going onto the bench if he was on the bench on Saturday? It is tough. It is harsh on him. But it's harsh on Gordon if you played the way he played when he come on and you don't get a start. It's harsh on Isaac that he's never getting a start.
Yeah, I totally get where you come from. And a lot of people as well, John, talking about Joe Willock and whether it's time to give him a rest. Are we at risk? It's slipping into a kind of lull of the season where, because Newcastle aren't winning as many games as they were earlier in the season and they're playing out these draws, that players end up becoming maybe scapegoats. And I know people will say, well, you've been on Max's back for a long time, but do we just have to kind of take a step back and reevaluate just how far Newcastle United have come? Or is it right that we're looking at individuals and saying, well, they're not performing well, they need to get out the side?
I think both of those things are right, Andrew, and it's very difficult to strike a balance. Newcastle United right now, as we sit here, are suffering by punching above their weight. We are only concerned because against all odds, we were third top of the Premier League in January. Third top, having last season had a fight a relegation battle. Newcastle are victims of their own success. They're bound to be. If they had stood about 7th, and then had a run with all these draws and there was 7th, and then suddenly had a run towards the end of the season and got up to 5th or 4th, it would be sensational. But once what these lads will learn, Eddie will learn, because it's the first time Eddie's been at this end of the Premier League, mind. Of course it is. He was at Bournemouth, for goodness sake. And he worked wonders there, but he wasn't going to be going for the Champions League at Bournemouth. But so it's new to him as well. What these guys are about to find out, that this is what life's going to be like, because this is what life is like at the top. When you're in the top 4, when you're going to cup finals, life's pressure like this. And when you do get a few doors, people will be saying, this is not good enough, mind. Let's get back to winning ways. That the way you're judged. I mean, we used to be able to limbo dance under the toilet door, didn't we? We didn't have to open it. We were low in a snake's belly when in the Ashley years. Now we're looking at it the other way. It is tough, but that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way it'll be next season. When we'll be, if we get in the Champions League, we'll be expecting to get in the Champions League the following season. And if we don't win the cup final, we'll be expecting to win a cup final next season. If we do win a cup final, because that is what Newcastle hope to become. They hope to become what Liverpool have been, what Manchester City have been, what Arsenal are going back to being this season. It is tough. It is harsh to judge them. But if you're going to reside up there, you're going to be judged by standards of being up there. You can't live third top and then play 6 successive draws and go down to 7 and still say that's terrific. It is. And wherever Newcastle finish this season, I'll be the first to say at the end of the season, thank you so much for this season. It's been terrific. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. We've got our pride back and our dignity back, wherever we finish. But that shouldn't stop us wanting to finish as high as we can. We shouldn't be grateful because we're at Wembley. We should say we're at Wembley, but we've been here before. It's about time we won at Wembley. And you know what the definition of failure is? Acceptance. Accepting that you've got to the finals, so anything after that's a bonus. Accepting that having been third top of the league, anything after that's a bonus. That is the real concern. That when you're at this end, you've got to keep the foot on the accelerator. And that's all we're doing. We're keeping our foot on the accelerator. Why? Because it's our club and we care about it and we're so proud of it and we want something tangible to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I guess that the criticism and attention and the scrutiny comes with playing for Newcastle United, and even more so when they're riding high at the top of the league. So more on Maxi then, because Maxi really is the big talking point.
Oh, indeed,
of
course.
Truel says Maxi hasn't got a full game since the autumn. He needs to start Saturday, and last match there was loads of players off the pace, so don't blame him for that. And then Ian comes in and says Maxi struggles with Big Dan behind him as he gets swamped due to no overlap. Maxi is much better with Target behind him. And then that's something that Darren agrees with as well, and says St. Maximum seems to play better with Target and left back. Now, Target's obviously been out with injury. He's back in training. We expect him to be available and pushing Dan Burn in the not too distant future. What do you make of those claims there by Darren and Truels and Ian? When Dan Burn and Matt Target are both as fit as one another, is it a case that it's Matt Target's place, or has Dan Burn done enough? And do you pick the left back in terms of the left back position, or do you pick the left back in terms of will it benefit the person playing in front of you?
Well, these days you've got to work in tandem. I mean, when your mate was scoring all these goals, Miggy, I mean, one of the reasons for that is that he's got Kieran Trippier behind him. That has been a very successful partnership for Newcastle United, Trippier and Miggy. And yes, I would think that Maxi will have something to say about that. Maxi will always divide opinion. He'll always have supporters because he's so exciting. and he'll always have detractors because he mightn't chase back, or he might go to ground too easy, or he mightn't score enough goals. So you're going to get both of those things with him. And it's very hard to say that you can only have one start and then he'll go out. But I was so disappointed with what he did with that start. I mean, he didn't look wildly enthusiastic to me, Andrew. He didn't look as if he was bursting a gut and it just wasn't coming off for him. He just looked almost lethargic, in his mind as well as in his body. And I don't think he did. And when he's gone on as a sub, he hasn't ripped the place up. Nobody's got a place by divine right. They've got to earn it. And people that are not in the team, and no doubt Isaac's been told this by Eddie, people that are not in the, and no doubt Maxie's been told it in recent weeks, when you go on as a sub, you've got to show to me, and you can say Isaac's done this recently because he scored one when he went on as a sub, didn't he? And then he made another one when he went on as a sub. So he's tried to influence Howe into getting a start. Maxie hasn't quite managed it. I mean, if you remember Maxie at his best, and by the way, I beat the gong this season by saying the best individual display I've seen in the black and white shirt, arguably, is St. Maximum against Man City. I mean, he was sensational, but you've got to earn the right. And I noticed one of the lads was saying is absolutely correct. St. Maximum can't carry the can for not beating West Ham because there was loads of people, but they had an off day. But some would say those people are regular first teamers and have earned the right to have an occasional off day. If you just come in the side, even if it doesn't happen for you, you've got to look as if you're trying to make it happen. I didn't get the feeling Maxie was trying to make too much happen. I don't mean he wasn't trying. I just meant he found life tough and accepted it was tough.
Yeah, but I mean, just on being a target, if both are fit, who are you picking? I mean, I'm not talking about this weekend.
I mean, Target is a proper left back by design and by career, and Byrne is a proper centre half. So it is different. And if Dan's going to have something wrong with him, it is going to be that he's not silky skilled going forward the way Trippier looks, and the way Target can look on a good day. I mean, Newcastle need everybody fit, and they need the full squad because the squad is so thin at the moment. Yes, we might have Isaac and Gordon for certain positions, but in other positions, what have we got in midfield? Some people might think Joe Willock deserves to be dropped, but how can he be dropped at the moment with Bruno out? Unless you're going to risk Elliot Anderson in there, how can he be dropped at the moment? So we're dreadfully short in midfield, and you can't say it's our own fault. We didn't sign a midfield player and we let Shelby go. You can't say it's our own fault. But we're desperately short in midfield, and we're desperately short at fullback, with both Kraft and Target long-term injuries, and that's why we went and got the West Ham kid, of course, for right back.
Yeah, I have plenty of support here for Target, though. Trio saying Target is the better left back in their opinion. Darren Lee says having Target back on the side will be like a new signing. I mean, it would be harsh on Dan Burn, but I suppose if you're judging it from a football point of view, which you imagine every decision is based on.
This is going to be after the cup final, or we're not going to get Target for, and therefore Burns got to play in the next two games and the cup final. And really, we've got to sort out what we're doing there.
But just the final point on this, long term, I mean, up until the end of the season, could Matt Target's return to the starting 11 be the key for Alan St. Maximum to rediscover his form, or do you think it's not that simple?
Alan St. Maximum's the key to Alan St. Maximum return to good form. Let's not blame everybody that's around him, else we'll make a case why Alan St. Maximum should stay in the team and Dan Burn should get dropped. The key to Alan St. Maximum is Alan St. Maximum. And by the way, the key to left back long term, if Newcastle are going to continue next season, to play in the Champions League with any sort of limited success early on and then continue to be a top 4 team, you know what the answer is at left back? A new left back.
Yeah, I
That's
thought
the
you were
answer.
saying that. People talk about Elliot Anderson, John. You mentioned him there. He came on against West Ham. Great to see. Didn't look out of place. Eddie Howe has said, you know, he could fit into that void left by Bruno's suspension. Bournemouth, you would think would be the perfect opportunity to give him a game. If you were going to you know throw him into a Premier League game, then throw him in to a game against the side who are bottom of the form table, have picked up four points from the last 10 games, lost 5 of the last 6. You know, can't keep a clean sheet. Saturday surely is the right time. If you're really, really keen on giving Elliot Anderson a go, surely it's the right time to do so.
There is that argument. There's the argument that Downham at home with 50,000 behind him in Liverpool. All Liverpool's failures are being put down to a great extent to their midfield, isn't it? So, you could make a case out from playing then. I don't think we're going to see dear old Eddie there behind you, who's never stopped smiling throughout all the conversation we've been having. I don't think, and is a man who makes the littlest changes possible. But we've said we've been unchanged since they put, it seems like since they put Gray's Monument up. Apart from having to change the side because of Bruno, I can't see him making 3 changes of Bournemouth, playing Elliot Anderson in midfield and playing Isak and Gordon. We'll be changing off the team shortly. I do follow your thinking, but even when Bruno comes back, we're not. It does release Joe Linton to play wide left if necessary, but. And that could even be the answer in the cup final. That Joe Linton goes wide left and Bruno comes back on the side, because Gordon, even if he scores 2 against Bournemouth and 2 against Liverpool, can't play in the cup final. So that might be the answer. But he doesn't make a lot of changes, does Eddie? And I think Gordon's his first one. Then possibly Isak, and then possibly Elliot Anderson in that order for change. But he won't play all 3 at Bournemouth. That's a knocking bet.
Right. Well, let's do what we usually do. We'll do it 2 ways. Okay. Let's run through the team that you would pick, and then we'll run through the team that we think Eddie Howe will pick. So I'm going to just start. Pope, Trippier, Cher, Botman, Dan Burn. So this is your side.
Yeah.
Willock, Joe Linton, Longstaff.
Yes.
Gordon, Almiron, Wilson.
No, Gordon, Isak, Wilson.
Gordon, Isak.
And that's not dropping Almiron, and I've been having a bit of fun with you. That's resting him. We'll need him in the cup final. Don't worry about that. I'm not going down that road, but that is what I would do for this particular game. And Almiron's on the bench, by the way. If it doesn't make it, he can go on.
So I'll tell you what I would do. I'd keep the back.
I know what you wouldn't do, and that's play Isak for Almiron, but carry on.
You would do. Haven't you got to that end of the field? 2 seconds, John. I'd bring in Anderson for Willock and play Joe Linton and Longstaff. I would then play Gordon, and I would then play Almiron and Wilson. So yeah, you're right. But the interesting thing is Eddie Howe, as you said, doesn't like to change teams. So I'll be 100% honest. I don't think he's going to change that side from West Ham. I think we'll see Maxey start. I don't think we'll see Isak come in. I don't think we'll see Gordon come in. I don't think we'll see Anderson come in. I think it'll be unchanged.
Well, it seems to be the word in Eddie's dictionary that runs from page 1 to page 700, unchanged. And I think you could be absolutely right. I think it'll be and you can make a case out for not bringing in Elliot Anderson, and you can make a case out for not bringing in Isak because you want to play Almiron and Wilson. But if you don't play Gordon, I think that is a huge missed opportunity. It's only a personal opinion. I can see him going unchanged. He goes unchanged, and they haven't lost. And that's often one of the reasons for going unchanged. But I would be hugely disappointed if Gordon doesn't start up top. I would be very disappointed. And I would think, by Jove, we need a result today to justify this. Sorry, we need a win today to justify this.
It's going to be an interesting team sheet, but I think it will
It
be.
is. It is.
Bournemouth spent around 50 million in January. Obviously, they've had a takeover. He seems to be under a bit of pressure, Gary O'Neill, even though obviously he's not going to admit that. But, they haven't won since I think just before the World Cup, as we mentioned there, the horrible run of form. So, if he loses against Newcastle, it could cost him his job. Newcastle, they don't have anything to fear with Bournemouth. I know you're going to probably come back to me and say, well, it's a two-horse race and anything's possible. But as you've mentioned, Newcastle United, without sounding arrogant, if you're serious about, let's say, just top six, beating Bournemouth.
Yeah, Andrew, yeah, absolutely, totally, and utterly correct. This is the sort of side you put to the book if you're going to finish in Europe. If you're going to finish in Europe, you put this side to the book. Newcastle, you're right, Newcastle got nothing to fear from Bournemouth. They've got plenty to fear from themselves. If they get themselves right, if they get back to playing optimistically, if they get back to basics with the front people doing what they did before Christmas, and we start scoring goals again, everything I'm looking for doesn't involve. I have no fear of what Bournemouth will do to us. I just fear what we might do to ourselves. We've got to get back to scoring. Bournemouth are desperately badly off. There's already unrest on the terraces with a section of the punters wanting Gary O'Neill to go. He hasn't won a game since he got the job, permanently, as we've said. But that's their problems, not our problems. The one thing for certain is they'll have a go because they're going. And there has been signs in some of their play recently that they haven't played as badly as the result sounds. For example, I think Brighton, and they are a very bright side, literally. 87 minutes before they got their breakthrough to beat them 1-0. So, it's not going to be a matter. They won't lie down. They're not in total disarray. But we've got to solve our own problems. And the team sheet and the way we go about it up top is what's going to interest me. And that'll determine whether it's a draw or whether it's a win, because I can't see Bournemouth winning.
I'll get your usual result prediction at the end of the show. I just want to show you this picture, John. Now, this is a collage made up of the celebrations against Everton this time last year, actually on this day in 2022. And this was a 3-1 victory Newcastle had over Everton at St James's Park. And we can see Jacob Murphy, Martin Dubravka celebrating at full time, Eddie Howe celebrating at full time, and Chris Wood celebrating during the game. This is the game that took Newcastle out of the bottom three for the first time since September last season, and they didn't return. And I just wanted to show you because, we've come on here, we're talking about Newcastle drawing 4 out of the last 5 things, not quite going as well as they had done in the earlier part of the season. And I just think this is a nice kind of image, a nice kind of throwback to this time last year to say we're there. Let's just remember the mess that Newcastle were in 12 months ago. And, let's look at the positives that we are facing, that we are enjoying right now, 1 year on.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. That seems like it's from another decade. When you look at that, you've got Murphy, who doesn't get in the side regularly. You've got Dubravka, that never gets in the side. And you've got Chris Wood, who I've forgotten about. And I think Nottingham Forest have forgotten about him. It's a totally different world, and we are grateful. We haven't stopped being grateful. If you care and you want your side to do even better, that doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It just means you care. And they're capable of doing a little bit better than they're doing at the moment. But as I said to you, when it comes to the end of the season, whether we finish third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or dare I whisper seventh, whether we've won the League Cup or we're beaten finalists, I will still say thank you after the season you've just shown there that we've had a season like this. But I still wanted. Can you imagine if we end the season and we've won the League Cup and we're fourth and in the Champions League? By Jove. And that's not Fantasy Island anymore. That's a possibility.
Definitely.
So let's go for it.
100%. I've just put into the comments there the link to where you can pre-order our Wembley special pullout. It's with the printers as we speak. So if you've already pre-ordered it, it should be arriving at your door, I think, over the next couple of days. John has done a lot of work. A lot of John's articles are in this pullout. I've done an interview with Tommy Craig, the last Newcastle United captain of a League Cup final, which was back in 1976 when John was just a young man. There's plenty of other exclusive interviews and content in this pullout. So do click that link and get yours ordered. John, did you enjoy putting this together?
Absolutely. I mean, it's wonderful because I put it together with the thought that if Newcastle win, this will lie in everybody's wardrobe, in the back of the wardrobe, for the rest of the time. People in 60 years' time will be saying, "Oh, Grandad left this. Look at it. There it is." And it will become part of Newcastle folklore. So, I'm just praying that we've managed to make that last step. Having been there 74, 76, 98, 99, I want us to win. I'm so thrilled we're there. But it's just another one, isn't it? It just becomes 5 matches at Wembley since we won. And I want we to win. But it's fascinating, it's wonderful, and it's terrific to be part of it. And to have Newcastle in the final against Manchester United. Wonderful. But let's win it and let's stay in the top 4 in the league. And that means winning at Bournemouth.
Certainly does. Some questions there saying, can I get one in America? You can. Worldwide shipping is available. So no matter where you are, you can get that delivered to your door. Now, let us talk about some big news today. And that is the story that Newcastle United have gone out and bought Strawberry Place. That was the land the club did own. It was sold under the previous owner to developers. But the big story today is that Newcastle United have gone out and bought it. Now, I've just put the story in the comments there. Big news, John, because all the talk away from the pitch, this year has all been about how Newcastle United can go about dealing with the massive demand that there is for tickets. The semi-final second leg, I logged on to see if I could get a ticket for my dad, and I was 23-something thousand in the queue, which is absolutely mind-blowing. The queue is often bigger than most Premier League clubs' actual capacity. It's absolutely crazy.
10,000 get into Bournemouth on Saturday.
Exactly. And it's clear something needs to be done. The owners are aware of the situation. They're aware that, there's such a big demand. And it was thought that expanding the Gallagher would not be something they could do because that land has been sold. Now, this land has been bought back. Now, there's no confirmation about what will happen, but people are automatically assuming that in due course, something will happen, and maybe the Gallagher is the thing that's going to be expanded. I mean, without knowing what their plans are, it's just great news to have that land back under club ownership, I guess, is the first place to start.
No question about that. It was an absolute disgrace that land was sold off by the previous owner, because quite frankly, that showed a total disregard for St. James's Park. 130 years of football at St. James's Park. It is the cathedral on the hill, as Bobby Robson rightly called it. It is our spiritual home. And it was like selling off some of the crown jewels to sell. What we were doing selling that? Just wanted to make a few bucks, because that's what Newcastle United were, a money-making machine. Now it's a football club again. And I find it terrific. I mean, I never would have thought that we would have been capable of buying it back, i.e., the people that bought it would allow us to buy it back. It is wonderful in whatever they do with it, whether it ends up as a fan park or whether it eventually becomes a fan park short term and long term. Some of the rebuilding to make the ground bigger. They're exploring every way to increase the capacity of St James's Park. There's one thing for certain: it's a huge step in the right direction, getting that plot of land back as Newcastle United. It was always Newcastle, and it should be Newcastle United, and it was given away for a few gold coins. So it is good it's back, and we await the official confirmation of what's going to happen to it, both short term and long term. But it'll be for the benefit of the club, and if it's for the benefit of the club, it's for the benefit of us, the Geordie supporters.
It's a massive game changer, isn't it? Because we've looked here at the Chronicle and done plenty of stories on it. I've spoken to Artex about what Newcastle could possibly do, and it just the more and more you spoke to people, it just seems the end goal. And this is just for me speaking to experts, is that if you really wanted to expand, you probably would have to move from the site, which nobody wants to do. The owners have come out and said it would be like ripping the soul out of the club. I certainly wouldn't want to move. There's something special about it, but it just seemed like everywhere you turned, it was either going to be really expensive to do something, and you're not really going to get that much expansion. But here they've got the land, and you can guarantee the best people will be looking at it along with the club and saying, well, this is what we'll do. This is what we'll do. And it's going to be an exciting way to see what happens. It really,
the wonderful thing, Andrew, is this club is growing on every level. It's growing on the pitch with the first team, and we're seeing that this season. It's growing in the academy, with it being totally revamped, and we're starting to get good young players into it. It's grown with the training ground. It's growing with St James's Park itself. It's growing with getting this land. These owners, you would almost think that, they're taking too much on. They're not. Too much on in one go. Because they're not just saying, let's look after the team first, and then after we've done that, we'll look at the ground. After we've done that, they're revamping everything immediately. The first team, the academy, the training ground, St James's Park, etc., etc. Wonderful, wonderful. Because these things take time, but we are doing them at breakneck speed.
But Mark there's just written to say today has been a good day to be a Geordie. And I think that's probably the bigger point as well, isn't it, John? That it's another sign that the owners, they get it. They get how important that cathedral on the hill is. They get, how important it is to fans to remain at St James's Park. Because again, you could say one thing and then do another thing, but everything.
Didn't the other guy do that? Say one thing and do the other thing.
But everything that the owners today seem to do, they follow through on their promises, and they seem to get what's important to the fan base. And buying this piece of land back is so important to so many fans, because to them, and again, we await official confirmation on what will happen, but to them, it just seems another, it seems to secure St James's Park's future as the home of Newcastle United Football Club.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of news. And but at the moment with Newcastle, the news is all good, and our expectations have gone high, because we've never been able to think beyond the halfway table. I mean, if we sort of the 10th in the table in the old days, we'd get nosebleed because we'd be that high. And now it's a different ball game completely. And this club is becoming the sort of football club Geordies ought to have, with their dedication, their numbers, thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands. At long last, it's been treated in the way that it ought to be. And that is terrific news. Long may it last. And that's why we want to win at Bournemouth, and we want to beat Liverpool, and we want to beat Manchester United, because we care about our club. We know it's capable of doing those things. And we've waited long enough. So let's be a little bit greedy.
Yeah. I think the fan park idea is something that you could see happening as well. Down Eels has a bit of history in that with what he did over in the United States, and it'd be interesting to see how that one would work out. But you imagine stalls and places you can buy food and drink and merchandise, going and having a nice time, bouncy castles and stuff before the game, giving you a well-rounded.
Bouncy castle at St James's Park, Newcastle, and now a bouncy castle.
I think we could host a little live event, John, if you want a bouncy castle. I'm sure the punters would love to see that.
I'm going over to the bouncy castle, me, you, and little Miggy, and we'll have a bit of fun in there.
Definitely, and when he can have his little winner's medal on from the cup, because he's going to score the winner.
Absolutely, why not?
And just finally as well, this is an interesting little note. So Keith Downey of Sky Sports was at a live event last night for the True Face fanzine, and he's told the crowd there that he's now tweeted about it. So I'm going to just.
You've frozen on my screen, Andrew. Can't hear anything, my friend.
Sorry about that. There we go, guys. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there.
Good gracious me, Andrew. Where have you been, my son? Have you been looking for that bouncy castle or something?
I've been looking just through the applications for the Miguel Amiron fan club. I got a little bit snowed under, but I'm back. Don't worry about that. Unfortunately, my green screen has also died on us. But alas, we'll continue, because what I was saying there, did you hear what I was saying?
No.
John? Right. Okay. We're back. So I was just mentioning the fact that Keith Downey from Sky Sports has reported that there's been some documentary filmmakers at St James's Park and following Newcastle around for an Amazon documentary, 4-part documentary covering the club. As Keith says, the series will chart the club on its own as they attempt to win a trophy and qualify for the Champions League. So that's going to be quite interesting. We've seen it with Tottenham, we've seen it with Arsenal. Going to be quite interesting.
Yes, it is. I hope it's done with dignity and not the way it was done at Sunderland, for example. It's very interesting. But if you're Geordie, you want to watch it with a little bit trepidation, because you don't want it to be silly or whatever. But it would have some viewing figures up here, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely would do. And I've just got Eddie back there on the green screen. So I'm sorry we disappeared there. I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe we'd talk too much and the internet wasn't having it. But I hope you enjoyed the show. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. John, all that remains to be done is, as usual, I want your result prediction for Saturday evening against Bournemouth.
Well, I'm taking a hard-earned victory by a single goal margin. I'm very, very tempted, Andrew, to say that Newcastle will draw, because then they might win. And I've said Newcastle will win for the last 5 weeks, and they've drawn.
You did give me a bit of abuse. You give me a bit of abuse on last week when I said they would draw against West Ham.
Well, yes, because it was negative thinking, and with Almiron in the side, you should have been telling us he would score the winner. But I'm reassured that he's going to score the winner at Bournemouth against Liverpool and in the cup final. So I feel a lot better for that. But I mean, Newcastle won't lose. It's whether they can score the goals to win, and that has been a concern. I mean, the only reason I've kept saying they'll win, and you said they would draw last week, and you were right, is because I just had a feeling that Newcastle must start scoring again because they're a better team than that. I mean, it's also who they've drawn with at home. When you think about them drawn with Bournemouth in the league, by the way, at home. We've drawn 3 times with Crystal Palace this season, 0-0, 2 at home. We've drawn with Leeds at home. We've drawn with West Ham at home. They're not good sides. You know, that's not drawn with Arsenal, Man City, Man United, and somebody else. So I'm looking for that breakthrough. I said it, Newcastle will win if they take care of their own business. It's not Bournemouth won't decide the result. Newcastle United will decide the result. We'll either draw yet again or win. And surely this time it'll be a win.
I'm going for a win. Newcastle are going to win. I think
Good.
Bournemouth are just that poor that Newcastle
win, and Almiron will score, of course.
Yeah. A double and an assist. It's going to be an Almiron special Saturday. You heard it here first, ladies and gents.
I don't know how I'm going to fill in my time between now and kickoff. I'm not excited. Well said, Andrew.
You'll be filling in that application, John, in no time. Sean says he's going to go for a 2-0 win. Dan says a 2-0 win as well. Darren says he's going for a draw, but he's hoping that
I can understand that, Darren.
And Roger's going for 4-0. So whatever Rogers has on his cornflakes this morning, serve me up a dish of that as well, because that is an optimistic shout. But we do appreciate you guys tuning into the Everything is Black and White podcast. Big thanks to John, as usual, for joining on the match preview. I just want to also point you in the direction of an event in London for Wembley weekend. We'll be taking the podcast out on the road. 2 venues we've got. So if you just look out on the Chronicle Twitter and my Twitter as well over the next coming days, I'm going to tell you guys where you can find me, Lee, Ryder, Aaron Stokes, and Kieran Kelly. Will be taking a couple of mics down and talking all things Newcastle United on the Saturday in a couple of pubs, one in King's Cross and one in Covent Garden, all being well. So look out for the details on that in the next coming days. We hope to see you guys there. But yeah, once again, thank you to you, John, for popping on to the pod. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk, everyone, to keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news, and enjoy the rest of your week.